Hi guys, welcome to Pixel Affair. It's Kobe here. So today's video is about a DM I got asking me how I'll do something like this image, right? So the person actually sent me a link, and when I clicked on the link, it took me to this page where I saw this bottle sort of spiral movement, right? And all of that. So I'm thinking maybe the middle one where the whole bottles are spiraling and that kind of movement, right? And I saw this, and I think it was basic, easy. I mean, actually, it's quite simple, but at some point it was a bit tricky, right? So let's actually get into Cinema 4D and see how we'll actually create that spiral looking effect. So I have this scene open here, and I have this bottle already in the scene, and I got the bottle from, if you come to your asset browser, you can search for bottles, and you can see I took this one, bottle water 01, right? That's what I brought into the scene. All right, so let's go ahead and create our spiral movement thing. So all I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll create a clone. I'll make the bottle a child of the clone. And initially I thought it was that simple. When I saw it was that basic, and I thought I was just going to use like come into select the clone, come into our attribute and just select the object and probably use the radial mode, right? Change the axis to this and increase it. Like I thought it was that simple and all that, but I realized all of this wasn't working, right? So what we are going to do is, let me actually show you. Like I'm sure there are several ways you can do it, right? So the first thing I do is like, let me create a circle, right? And I'll make it probably a little bit smaller. You can leave it depending on how you want the size to, but I'll make this one a little bit smaller. And then we can come into our object sweep and make our circle a child of the sweep, right? Come into our splines, and I'll choose the end side, make it a child of the sweep after the before the circle, and I'll make the end spline smaller, right? And then I'll select the end spline. I'll reduce the size to like 4, and now I'll select the clone, come into the mode, I'll change it from radial to object, and then the object you want to clone on is the sweep. So I'll drag the sweep in here, and you can see it's cloning on the surface of the sweep. Then I'll select I'll come down to the attributes of the clones. I'll change it from distribution set to surface, but I'll change it to polygon center, and now you can see it's created all of these copies for us, right? So now let's actually adjust a little bit the way the whole thing is looking. So first of all, select the inside, and probably let's make it a little bit bigger. Or actually, let's select the clone and come to our transform and move the Y upwards a bit so that it doesn't intersect at that point. Can even move it a little bit more. Something like this should be fine, right? So now that we've created our number of clones, I'll select the sweep and come down to the attribute, the object tab, click and open the details, and in the rotation, I'll right click and I'll change the spline preset to linear, right? So now we have a linear rotation, and you can see 360. Now you can see it's giving us that spiral like rounding thing. So if I set this one to minus 360 and increase this one to 360, now we have enough. But the issue with using the sweep is that with the you can actually get the loop though, but now you can't get it to be rotating the way you want and all of that. So that was the issue with the sweep when I was trying to work with the sweep. So another way I actually found that was actually use a cylinder. So let me delete the sweep and I'll create a cylinder. I'll reduce the rotation segment to 4 as well, and maybe increase the height segment to 40, right? Then I'll go in here and I'll create in my deformers, and I'll create a spline wrap, make it a child of the cylinder, and I'll select the cylinder. I don't want the caps, so I'll select the cylinder, come to its attributes, and in the caps I'll uncheck caps, right? So now you can see we don't have caps in the cylinder, and I'll select the spline. Actually, I shouldn't have deleted the sweep, I should have kept the circle, but let's go ahead and create our circle again. Let's make it a little bit smaller once again, and then in the spline wrap we'll tell it to wrap the cylinder around the circle. So I'll drag the cylinder into the spline in here. I can see it's deforming our cylinder in a way. All we have to do is select, come into our axis and change it to Y. And that's because if I select the cylinder and come into the cylinder object, you can see the orientation is set to Y. So we have to change our spline wrap also to Y. Right now, if I change the display to garage shading with lines, you can see we have this. Now, the same thing we did, we select the clone, make sure our mode is set to object, and then let's drag in the object, which is the cylinder, in here, and you can see it's cloning on every polygon center exactly how we want, right? So now you can actually select the cylinder and reduce the radius a little bit, right? Now let's select the clone and adjust a little bit of the transformation. So I'll come in here and probably play, no, not this. I think here, set this one to, I think, let's say 90 or minus 90, and also adjust the maybe not this. So basically you have to play around with this, like the X, the position X and all that a little bit to make sure this thing is well aligned. I'll change the display back to garage shading, right? And now I can see it's aligned. Let's adjust it a little bit more, something like this, and maybe even reduce the radius of the cylinder a little bit. Maybe 25 is fine. And now basically we've created the same thing that we did with the sweep, right? So all we have to do is now select the wrap, spline wrap, come down here to the same thing we did in the rotation segment, spline rotation in the sweep. You come here, you can see the rotation, right click and set it to, change the preset to linear, and I can see it's done the same thing for us, right? We can actually increase it a bit more, so you can set it to probably 200 or whatever, but for now let's leave it just like it is. Now the reason why this one works is that with the sweep, you don't have any option. After you are done getting it in this form, you can actually get it to rotate. But in the spline wrap, we have this spline rotation strength, and with that, if we actually select this particular spline, right, and move it up like that, you can see it's rotating it. So let's actually move it somewhere up here, and now it's ended. But we can now use the spline rotation strength to now continue to rotate it forever, right? Because this one can go till infinity. So you can now set your keyframe with this one. So I can actually bring it to 0, right? Set a keyframe at frame 0, and maybe at frame, let's say 90. I'll increase it probably to 300. And now if I set a keyframe, hit play, and see, we get the movement that we want, right? Or if you want it the other way around, you can basically simply reverse it, so you can go, the other way around. So however you want it, you can actually do. So this is how I actually did this effect. It's quite simple, but sometimes it can be actually tricky, so I felt like it was necessary for me actually to do a tutorial. Another thing is that now that we have everything set, if we select the cylinder and increase, for instance, the rotation segments, you can see, let's actually go back to frame 0, right? And you can see we have like sort of 4 lines, right? But if we increase it to 5, you can see now the shape is changing, and it keeps changing and all of that. So let me actually, you can reduce the number of segments in the high segment, and now I can simply come into the clones, not really, yeah, the circle, reduce the radius a little bit. All right, I'll reduce it as small as we want, and now if we hit play, you can see, but it's quite fast, right? So let's select our spline wrap, reduce the speed, maybe from at frame, let's set it to just 100, and see how the whole thing looks like. And it gives us that feel like spiral moving effect, right? It's quite simple, but also can be a little bit tricky, but then it works. So let me actually come into my timeline, select this, and make sure it's linear, so that, let's see what we have. supposed to sort of loop and everything. But then I hope you get the idea of how you do something like this, and it's quite interesting. Now from here going, you can probably start playing to get a lot of geometric shape. So I can probably select the cylinder, and let me go back here. Let me see if I increase the radius, something like that. Maybe I'll hide the cylinder in here. You can get a lot of interesting stuff with the cylinder, like playing around with just the cylinder, right? And get a lot of, you see, interesting movement and interesting kind of shapes playing around. You can come into the clone and probably let's play with this rotation here. So you can see you can get a lot of interesting moving shapes and patterns and all of that, geometric looking movements. And if you actually replace the bottle with spheres, you can actually create a lot of interesting stuff. So I've actually replaced the bottle with this sphere, and I'll just change the mode to vertex, right? And now we have this. I've reduced the number of the rotation segment to just 3, and you can see you have this nice looking shape. You can increase it, the high segment and all of that, or when you increase the rotation segment, you can see keep getting a lot of interesting looking shapes, right? And all of that. So this is actually interesting way of playing around to get a lot of interesting looking shape. Let's actually select this and see, change it to something like a edge, and we get the same thing, right? So you can play around with it, have fun, and you can come up with a lot of looking, moving spiral shapes and patterns and all of that. It is quite interesting, and I thought it would be something that I could do a quick tutorial on that, and I hope this was useful and you learned something. Now let me actually go back to the video with the ones at the background. There's bottles at the background. I think it's quite simple. It's just you finding a spline, like the normal, how do you call it, where is it, helix, right? And now clone on the helix, and I'm sure with that one you'll be fine. So just with the helix and you clone on it, right? But apart from that, I hope this is something that was useful and you've learned something from it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And kindly subscribe to the channel, and if there's anything you don't understand, you can ask in the comment, or you can DM me on Instagram at Pixel Affair. Thank you for watching.